Hello my beautiful people, and welcome back, or welcome to my channel if you haven't been here before. So today I thought I would do something amazing and rank the best and worst romance movies. Originally I thought it would just be romance movies from the 2000s, but then I thought, you know what, to hell with it. We're gonna cover everything because there are some really bad modern movies I wanted to discuss and some older ones. So we're covering the whole range today, and God, let me tell you how hard it was to rank these. It was so difficult because some of them I really love and they're incomparable in a sense, but I had to make myself rank them, which was so difficult. So make sure you give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it, and also I hope you like my makeup. Isn't it cute? Only took me about 3 hours. Any movies I don't discuss is because I probably have already talked about them in my ranking rom-coms video, which I'll link down below, and I've also done a video about ranking teen movies, so I'll link that down below too. This is part of my tier ranking series. And make sure you follow me on my Instagram because I'm going to share some stuff about how I do my makeup and my hair, Q&As and things like that. And without further ado, let's get into this video. The first one I had to put at the bottom of the list in my trash tier is 365 Days, which is a very new movie, and it has a sequel too, which came out this year. And God, I cannot stand this movie. It's awful. I have already reviewed it, so I'll link that down below too, but it was truly horrendous, awful. I don't even know what the point of it was. It's just very sexual, very creepy and problematic setup as well, of her being this kidnap victim falling in love with her kidnapper, which I actually think is very disturbing that people didn't seem to have a problem with this. I've spoken to people who said that, and I just don't get it. I get the two main characters are attractive people and we like to watch pretty people, but why? It's genuinely awkward to watch and terribly scripted and cringy, and has all these montages that don't even add anything, and I just, I think this is the worst romance movie I've ever watched. I do not recommend it. The next movie is similarly bad, After, the whole After series. That includes After We Fell, and just anything with the word after in it is awful, and it's based on a fan fiction book series that was also horrendous, and it's just so toxic. The main couple doesn't even like each other that much. They're really cringy and annoying. Hardin, the main character, is meant to be a bad boy, but he's just annoying and whingy, so he doesn't even fit into what he's supposed to be. Like, if you're going to make him a bad boy, fine, then commit to it, do it well. Then the next one is 50 Shades of Grey, which again, I cannot stand, which is about this woman called Anna who goes to work for this rich guy called Christian Grey, and he's meant to be all intimidating and seductive, and there's a lot of issues with consent in that movie as well, and breaching people's personal boundaries. I've reviewed that too, so I'll link it in the description, and I don't want to be repeating myself and going over why it's bad, because objectively it's just an awful movie, and I don't think it needs much more explanation than that. The next one, still in our trash tier, is Twilight. It's not as bad as the others, that's why it's a little bit higher up, but I still can't stand it, and it is very creepy, like this idea of the vampire Edward Cullen watching Bella, his love interest, as she sleeps. And also it's just genuinely cringy with the dialogue and stuff. As a preteen, I remember really enjoying the movie and saying to my brother, and he agreed, this is a really good movie, so he watched it twice. So it's not that bad, let's say, if you're 11 or 12, but when you're older and you watch it, you realize just how bad it is, especially with the following movies in this series, with the love triangle situation. It's just really bad and weird, and I don't know why they're all so obsessed with her, and it's just uncomfortable as opposed to cute. The next one's You've Got Mail, which again, I just don't like. This is a romance movie from, what is it, the 90s? It's a very old movie, and I don't like it. I found it so boring at points. I kept falling asleep, and I just didn't find that the main couple had much chemistry, so I was confused as to why they were even together at the end, and I didn't love it. The final one in this tier is To All the Boys, which is a much better movie than the others in the sense that it's got some really cute scenes and some fun characters, but the problem is that I find it too boring to rewatch it, and also I don't find the main character Lara Jean that interesting, nor do I find her love interest particularly appealing. I get that people were going through this Noah Centineo obsession phase and they found the actor really attractive, but I was never part of that. Like, I was never hopping on the bandwagon like, yeah, oh my god, he's so amazing. I just never got the appeal at all. I was like, he's a bit crusty. Not the actor, but as in the characters he plays, I don't like them. I find them very average and forgettable. So even though it's actually not a bad movie and the hot tub scene was good, if you know, you know, I would never rewatch it, so I can't bring myself to put it any higher on the list, and I think there are so many better movies than this one. We've gone a tier up now into more okay-ish movies, but I probably wouldn't rewatch them, so I don't see the point of ranking them higher. Or for whatever specific reason, even though they're quite good movies, I'm not particularly motivated to watch them again, so they have to be on this tier. The next one's Beastly, which is like a modernized version of Beauty and the Beast, with this deformed main character who feels really insecure about it, and then this girl falls in love with him, and it's honestly really weird. Like, the makeup they did on him for his transformation is so bizarre. Like, he's got tattoos all over his face and I could never get past it. It's got Vanessa Hudgens in it as the love interest, who, although she's sweet, she's not the best actress in this movie, and also she's doing this thing where she's speaking, like trying to make her voice deeper or more mature sounding, but it sounds really awkward at points because she's like, wow, what are we going to do about this? And it just sounds strange. And also, even though it has some nice scenes in it, I could never see the point of this movie. Like, why was it made? It's got a very odd script that always sounds a bit out of place, like there's something wrong with it, but you can't put your finger on why, as if they were on the first draft and didn't get round to tightening it up and refining it. So it's kind of clunky, which is why I wouldn't rewatch it. And the next one's La La Land, which I know was nominated for so many awards and has Emma Stone in it and Ryan Gosling, so technically I should love it. And it has some amazing scenes, an incredible soundtrack, so I'm really sad that I'm putting it so far down on this list, because it has so many beautiful aesthetics too, with the snow falling from the ceiling and slow-mo and everything so magical, and certain song sequences, but I don't like it, so I can't rank it higher. I tried watching it the first time and I found it boring, and I thought, is something wrong with me? It's about these two creative people that fall in love. Mia, who wants to be an actress, and then a musician who's played by Ryan Gosling. I loved the idea of it because there aren't many movies out there I'd watched at the time that were about struggling artists, so I thought this is going to be amazing. When I watched it the first time, I found it so boring and so paced that I had to stop, and then I thought I was being harsh because everyone I knew loved the movie. So a few years later I revisited it with my mum, thinking I was just being too harsh, and both of us found it so boring, and we were like, are we okay? Is something wrong with us? Or is it just that this movie's bad and everyone else is wrong? I don't know. But it was just not my kind of movie, I suppose. I didn't enjoy the romance that much either. I felt like it was really boring. So when they break up, and that's a really good breakup scene to be fair, I wasn't feeling it because I didn't care about their relationship. And when they didn't end up together at the end, I was like, I don't care. The next movie is called It's Kind of a Funny Story, which I watched initially because it had Emma Roberts in it as the love interest, and it's a 2010 American comedy drama film. So I know technically it could be included in the comedy list, but the reason I put it in here is because the romance was the most memorable part of it to me, and it does play a very big role in the plot, and it stood out to me, so that's why. But it's about a guy who's really struggling with his mental state. He's actually a teenager, so he is put into a psychiatric ward. He has a really cute romance with Emma Roberts, and I liked the idea of the two of them causing mayhem in this hospital and also trying to discover themselves. Even though it's meant to be a comedy film, I actually didn't find it very funny, so that's why it's weaker for me. The next movie is called Endless Love, which is a 2014 romance film starring that guy who was in Wild Child, Alex Pettyfer, I hope I'm saying it right, and Gabriella Wilde, who was in Poldark, and I really liked her character in Poldark, which is why I wanted to watch this movie. And I had high expectations coming into it. Like, the poster shows what looks like these two teenagers lying on a lake together, looking all romantic, which reminded me of Nicholas Sparks. So I was imagining like a teens fall in love in the summer and then a separated type of romance, which I have a soft spot for. So I came into it thinking it would be really good, and I left it actually being really disappointed, to be honest. It's about this girl called Jade who's 17 and she graduates from high school with really good grades, but she doesn't have many friends and nobody really notices her. And there's this guy called David who's another senior, and he's had a crush on her for years but never acted on it, which I get where they're going with that. Like, he watched her from afar and had a crush, but it came across as a pretty creepy way to open the movie and a little bit like, okay, where are we going with this? You've never once spoken to her and now you're graduating, about to leave, then you realize you need to like get some confidence and go and talk to her. It was a bit disappointing. I was like, come on dude, get your shit together. But I was forgiving. I thought, you know what, fair enough. And it's actually very realistic. I know a lot of people do that where they miss those opportunities, so I'm not going to judge it. There were some really sweet parts of this movie. For example, the main character Jade doesn't have many friends, and it was really compelling to see that she was shy and nobody really liked her, because it's just sad, isn't it? I just resonated with her and I was like, oh my gosh, the poor thing, because she decides she wants to throw a party to celebrate graduating, which her parents are really not very nice. They're not really into it, but they do it for her. And originally, no one turns up to the party. It's so bad. But then David hears that she's having a party and he gets everyone to leave the party they're at to go to Jade's party. So he basically saves her, because otherwise it would have been so humiliating and no one would have turned up. So at this party, Jade's party, David starts chatting to her and they actually have a kiss, and it's very intense, very fast, as in they haven't spoken the whole time they've been at school, but then when they see each other, they immediately hit it off. Not that things can't move fast, but I wanted to spend time seeing their relationship develop, but it's like they fell in love with each other so quick, almost like love at first sight. And that's a problem I had throughout the whole movie, is that they decided they wanted to be together and they slept together really quickly into the movie. And I was like, oh my gosh, but I feel like I don't really know either of them, nor do they know each other, but yet they've decided that they're star-crossed lovers and they end up together at the end and they risk it all to be together. And I just think that it could have been so much better if a bit more time was taken to show them getting to know each other, rather than them deciding they were soulmates immediately off the bat. I know some people rush into relationships quickly, and that's absolutely fine, but a lot of my friends and a lot of people I've spoken to aren't like that. It takes a lot for them to trust somebody, to warm up to somebody. It would be nice to show more romances that are like that, because I know a lot of people are like that, where it takes a while for them to let their walls down, and that's fine too. In a book or a movie, I find it so much more rewarding when the couple takes their time, because then when they do get together at the end, you know it's real and it's because they wanted to and they earned it. I really liked the aspect of the movie where Jade's dad was really overprotective and controlling, because he didn't like that his daughter was being taken away from him, and so he does some really bad stuff to try and effectively ruined David's life. But it wasn't just like, stay away from my daughter. He was ruining David's chances of getting into university and really serious things like that, where it was a little bit unbelievable. And then they have this fire at the end where David goes to save him, and I was like, okay, this is getting a little bit into cliche territory. I like the idea of Jade's parents being obstacles and of things coming between her and David, but it's like it was taken a little bit too far. The next romance movie is The Best of Me, a 2014 American romantic drama film, and it really pains me to put it so low down on this list because it's actually a Nicholas Sparks movie, and I love Nicholas Sparks. Those were the main romance movies I watched during my teen years, and if you're a hopeless romantic, I would recommend watching Nicholas Sparks stuff because it's always so genuine and from the heart. And it upsets me that this one is the weakest out of a lot of his romance movies. The film follows the story of Dawson and Amanda and alternates between their teenage selves and their adult selves back and forth. And that was where my first issue came in, is because of these alternating timelines, they had to pick a different pair of actors to show them as teenagers and then older actors to show them when they're older. But the problem is that the younger version of Amanda looks nothing like the grown-up version of her. The actors look nothing alike, and same with the character of Dawson. And I felt like I was watching two separate love stories, and I had to keep reminding myself, no, it's the same couple, just grown up. So I almost wish that they just used makeup or something to age the actors, kept the same actors. That would have made so much more sense. I don't know what they were doing trying to throw in these different older actors, because it doesn't work. What are the things that I like about this movie? The main thing is that it really pulls at your heartstrings. Dawson, the male love interest, is such a good character. He was born into this notorious criminal family with an abusive father, and it's just devastating to see that the way that he's treated, and it made me root for his relationship with Amanda so much more because he was such a sweetheart. Dawson and Amanda attended the same high school, and gosh, these two have so much chemistry when they started to fall in love and go on dates, and their first kiss, you know, when he picked her a rose and went to kiss her, like, it was so beautiful. I would still recommend actually watching this movie, even though it has its flaws, because certain scenes are so gorgeous, like when they kiss in the rain and everything, and I was like, oh. But there was this situation with Dawson's criminal family which is escalating, because although he's away from them, he's not actually separated from them, so they come back and he's put into some very life-threatening situations. It doesn't have a happy ending, and I know that's a bit of a lame reason to not rank a movie higher, and some people love sad movies, but I don't want to go into a romance movie to root for the couple only for it to end tragically. I'm not here for that, especially because the rest of the movie was so dark. It just pushed me a bit too far to also have it end on a negative, heavy note. I wanted the struggle to be worth it and for it to accumulate into something actually positive and uplifting, or even bittersweet, but having it end just on a genuinely depressing note was a bit too much for me. The next movie is called Call Me By Your Name, which is an LGBTQ romance about two boys who fall in love. One of them is 17-year-old Elio, and he falls in love with this older guy that comes to stay at the house with the family. I just don't like this movie, which is so sad because it's beautiful and it has some really symbolic moments shown through the set, but I didn't enjoy it. I've tried watching it I think 2 or 3 times now because I keep thinking I must be missing something, but then every time I watch it I don't enjoy it and I find it really boring, and I don't even love the romance between the two guys, unfortunately. I really didn't. I just thought it was a very weird relationship and they didn't really spend much time actually talking and getting to know each other. It felt more physical than anything else. It's so sad. I really wanted to like it. The next romance, which is more of a traditional romance, is 10 Things I Hate About You, which is an older movie. I love the enemies to lovers aspect, but in terms of other scenes from the movie, I find them kind of boring and a bit awkward to watch and not the best. And even with the romance, the development of it was a bit clunky at points, a little weird. Even though it's a good movie, it's not great. Like, I wouldn't rewatch it. I would only rewatch specific scenes, but the movie as a whole I didn't love. The only reason I actually like it is because it has enemies to lovers, and that's probably my most favorite romance trope, but that's not enough of a reason for me to rank it higher. We've moved into the next tier now, which are really good movies. They're not my go-to movies that I would think of when I think of my favorite movies, although I do like them and I appreciate the good things that they have to offer. The first one is 4 Weddings and a Funeral with Hugh Grant. It's about these different people's lives that intermingle every time they reunite at weddings and then a funeral, especially this main couple who's brought back together at these different events. And the idea of that's really cool, right? That their romance rekindles when they see each other at the next event and then they're separated again. So it's a beautiful concept, but I didn't love the romance between Hugh Grant and his love interest because I thought it was a bit boring at points and they didn't really connect in a way that I liked. I wasn't rooting for them to be together or thinking about it for days on end after the movie finished about how amazing it was. Like, they just didn't stick with me. I didn't feel that they had that much chemistry either, to be honest. The reason why this movie's ranked higher is because of the supporting characters and the other subplots that happen throughout this movie, which is really great. Then we've got Groundhog Day, which is a great movie about this guy who's a bit of a douche, and then he keeps waking up in a time loop with his day repeating, and he has to become a better person in order for him to break through this trap and go back to his usual life, which is super clever. And I actually quite liked the romance between him and the girl that he falls in love with. He came across as really creepy at points when he started kissing her and then got annoyed that she wasn't really reciprocating in the way that he wanted, and I was like, ugh, what a sleazebag. It had some cute moments, but I just think there are so many more standout romances out there, and I noticed that I preferred other aspects of the movie. If this was in a different ranking video, this movie would be way higher, but I'm more focusing on the romance and do I like them as a couple, and I have to say, not so much. It's not brilliant, so that's why, unfortunately, even though it's an amazing movie, it can't be ranked too high up. The next movie is called The Art of Getting By, which is a 2011 American romantic comedy drama film, which has Emma Roberts in it and Freddie Highmore, and I would actually recommend you go and see this movie if you haven't already, because it's quite underrated. No one really knows about it, and although it's not my favorite movie in the world, I think that it has so much to offer. It follows this guy whose mental health isn't great, great. He's called George, and he's a loner high school student who skips school and isn't motivated because he has a attitude of, well, who cares, everything's pointless anyway. He's quite negative. And then he meets this girl played by Emma Roberts called Sally, and they end up developing this romance that I don't know what it was, but they really worked for me and I really enjoyed their chemistry a lot. The only reason why it's ranked lower is because sometimes Sally was just weird, and I know some teenagers are like this because they don't know what to do and what not to do, so I'm being more forgiving because of the fact she was a teenager, and teenagers can be messy sometimes, but honestly, she made stuff so much more awkward than it needed to be. The next one's The Fault in Our Stars, which is about two teens with cancer who fall in love. As you can imagine, it's a recipe for tragedy and disaster. I was hoping that there would be problems with their relationship, so I could go, oh well, it wouldn't have worked anyway, or oh well, they weren't meant to end up together. But I actually think they would have, which is what makes it worse, because they had such a good connection. It's just too sad. I could never watch this movie again. I just can't, because it destroys me every time I do it. So why would I do it to myself? So only watch it if you're already feeling sad, because it's just going to dampen your day. The next one's My Best Friend's Wedding, which I like more because I think that I could actually rewatch it without crying. And although it has some sad and bittersweet moments, it's a movie that won't completely crush my soul. So although it teaches some hard lessons, it does so in a way that's not completely overpowering. And I also like it because it follows a main female character who for once isn't super amazing and perfect, and she's actually pretty flawed. So it's got Julia Roberts in it as well, which is a massive pro because I adore her. It's about this girl who had this on and off again relationship, and then she finds out that he's going to get married, and that's when she realizes she wants him back. And to be honest, it wasn't clear to me whether that was because she wanted him or whether she more didn't like that he was moving on and she couldn't close that chapter. It actually ends on a note where it teaches you a lesson that not every person you meet you're going to end up with. Not every person you date is going to be your soulmate. Sometimes people are there for a chapter, but they're not meant to be there for the rest of your life. And that was the case in this movie for sure, with the main character and her love interest. What's cool about the main character, Jules, learning all these lessons is that she's actually not very likable at points. She makes a lot of mistakes, and she's bitchy and petty, trying to ruin the relationship between Cameron Diaz and her love. And she's hoping that maybe if she ruins the relationship, then he'll want her back and he won't get married. Cameron Diaz is really sweet and really happy in her relationship and well-meaning. It's not nice that Jules is pretending to be her friend in order to sabotage her relationship. And what makes this movie so spectacular is that Jules is punished for her bad behavior rather than rewarded, and she doesn't get the guy in the end. It was never going to work and she was being a bit delusional. And then at the end, at the wedding, she just dances with her best friend and has a nice time with him. And that's it, that's the end. There's not a new love interest introduced for her, and I thought that was excellent. The next movie is called Blue is the Warmest Color, which is one of those movies that upsets me to rank it so low, because if it had a few things tweaked and adjusted, it could have been amazing and one of my favorite romance movies ever. There are quite a few flaws with it, which is why I just can't bump it up a notch. It's actually a French movie, 2013 romance film, and it follows Adele, a French teenager who discovers desire and freedom when a painter called Emma enters her life. So it's a relationship between the two girls, which is nice. We need more diversity in movies. We don't have enough, especially in the romance genre. And it charts their relationship from Adele's high school years to her early adult life and career as a school teacher. Now, as you can imagine, they met in high school, so it's not going to be a long-term thing most likely. And it's one of those movies again that shows that not everyone you date is meant to be someone you end up with. But I have to say that because the connection between the two girls was so strong, I was actually really gutted that the movie ended the way it did, because it just makes me reluctant to rewatch it. It was also extremely long to make it more realistic, which I actually liked, and I wish there were more romance movies that were really long like this, because it gives more time for us to get to know the characters. And approximately 800 hours of footage was shot, which shows like how much time they put in. It's just brilliant. It's such a good idea. It makes you feel so much more connected to the characters, because it's like watching their life unfold. And the movie has a lot of scenes of Adele just chilling and living her life, which makes it so much more real and raw, because it's like she's a real person. The film has a very raw depiction of sexuality, which I actually liked, in the sense that it's just this very natural connection between the two girls where they do have that very strong sexual chemistry. However, I thought that the sex scenes were ridiculously excessive and just didn't need to be that intense and it does seem a bit exploitative. I just don't think it's necessary. I think you could cut them down a bit. But it is an excellent, beautiful movie, and I thought that the chemistry between the two women was off the charts. The next movie is called Romancing the Stone, which is this adventure romance movie between this romance writer and then this guy who's very different from her, wild and lives a bit of a crazy life, and he's a risk taker. And so I loved the contrast between the two of them. Her sister's kidnapped, and so she has to go to try and save her, and then she meets this guy on her journey and asks him to help her, and he wants the money, so she pays him to help her, but then they end up forming this relationship when they're on this little expedition together. It's a really fun movie. I actually really enjoyed the adventure aspect of it. It's super fun. The set's gorgeous, and the two of them actually had a lot of chemistry. I think because it's quite an old movie, the film industry back then was even more exploitative of women than it is now. Like, I think they've realized they can't do that anymore, so if they do, it's a bit more subtle, but back then you could kind of do whatever. There's a shot of her dress ripping a bit and then him looking at her legs and being like, oh, nice. And I feel like now if you did that, people would be raging. So they tend to not do that so much in a lot of movies now, or at least tone it down a bit, hoping no one will notice, because with that sort of thing in a movie now, I think a lot of people would say that's a bit weird, or he's objectifying her or whatever. And despite those things, it was actually a really cute romance, and I loved how the main character was such like a hopeless romantic, and she writes books about her dream man but has never met him and then actually meets him, and it's just a really cute, fun watch. I would definitely rewatch it as well because it actually has a properly happy ending. Oh my god, it's raining. The next one's called Passengers, starring Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence, and it's a 2016 science fiction romance film, which is actually really good, but also would have been better if they just didn't make it a romance and they just committed to it being like a thriller or a horror. And unfortunately, even though the romance was quite nice, it would have been better if they just committed to having it be messed up. I'll explain. Basically, it's about these people that are in outer space going to a different planet, and so they're traveling for years and their bodies are preserved in these like coffin things so that they stay young by the time they arrive. But then Chris Pratt's malfunctions, and so he wakes up like 100 years too early or something before they land, so he'll end up living alone in this massive spaceship thing and then dying alone. And so out of absolute desperation and loneliness, he wakes up one of the female passengers, Jennifer Lawrence, who he thinks is super beautiful. He'd watched quite a few interviews with her and he thought she was gorgeous, and the problem is that he lied to her and he made out that her coffin thing had just malfunctioned and that he didn't know why she'd woken up, and so they're just stuck there together. And the problem is that there seems to be absolutely no way of them fixing the situation, and I totally understood why he did that. He was lonely, depressed, he would have killed himself or something, it would have been awful, and he just wanted some companionship. All he has to talk to is this robot who isn't even real, and he wants a girlfriend. Like, it makes perfect sense, I understand why, but you have to admit that it's extremely creepy, because for months when they're dating, she has absolutely no idea that he did that. I'm just going to close the window. She has no clue. So when she finds out that he's lied to her and that he was the one that woke her up, it destroys that relationship, basically. It also feels like a very creepy justification for the main guy, Chris Pratt, being manipulative and being creepy and dishonest, but then trying to put a twist in it and marking it as romantic, which is why I can't rank it higher up. We see the movie from his point of view, from his eyes, so him doing that and making that decision to wake her up feels totally justified because we feel bad for him. Just imagine how creepy it would have been if the film opened from Jennifer Lawrence's perspective of her waking up and then meeting this guy who said he'd been woken up for a while too, and then her getting to know him and falling in love with him from her perspective, and then her finding out he'd woken her up and he'd effectively ruined her life. He took away her opportunity to wake up with the other passengers and make friends, and now because of him she's got a really difficult choice, basically either kill herself or sit around being lonely or live this romance with him. And your romantic partner cannot be your whole world and your best friend and your therapist and your support system. You cannot make one person your everything. It just doesn't work that way. It's completely out of balance. And that's kind of the vibe of this movie. And I really struggle to believe that the two of them could cohabit, live together, do their gardening or whatever they did in this treehouse, talk to the robot, and genuinely be okay with that. and think, yep, this is great. Like, wouldn't you go insane and just want to kill each other because you're spending so much time with the same person day in, day out? And wouldn't she, even if she said she was okay with it, grow to resent him? So even though it was actually a really enjoyable movie and I would definitely rewatch it, I just can't get past that aspect of it. And the next movie is The Age of Adeline, which I love because I feel like the romance in it was a lot healthier, so that's why it's ranked higher, starring the gorgeous Blake Lively. And it's about this woman who has this weird magical experience where she's basically stuck at the age of 29. And the reason why I love this movie so much, and I would recommend that you watch it, is because it puts such a different spin on aging that we're used to. Normally in the media, aging's made out to be this really bad thing, especially for women. It's like you're undesirable past the age of 30. And what I love about this movie is it spins that by saying, well, what happened if you couldn't age and everyone around you was, you know, dying? You wouldn't feel good. All Adeline wants is to age, and it's so nice when she finally discovers her first grey hair at the end of the film, because it's like she realizes that it's okay to age and you can look forward to aging and embrace it as a natural part of life. Also, the romance that she has between her and this guy is really sweet, and I thought he was so gorgeous and lovely, and they worked really well together. We've moved into the next tier now, which is great movies. They're not like my favorites, but they're in my demigod tier, so I do love them and I would recommend you watch them. So we're going to start off with Clueless, and I wanted to talk about it in my teen movies video or my rom-coms video, but I just didn't get around to it. So I didn't want to just not talk about it because I need to. So I just thought I'd put it into this video, even though it's not really a romance movie, because the romantic subplot is really big and they are a very famous romance kind of couple. So I thought it wouldn't be bad to put it into this video. But it's about this girl called Cher who's kind of spoilt and likes matchmaking people, but her own love life is a mess. So it's basically a modern adaptation of Jane Austen's Emma, which is incredible because I love Jane Austen. I love this movie because it's funny, it's got iconic fashion and amazing one-liners, and I like that the main character isn't the most likable at points and she has to learn to be a bit more honest with herself. Her and Josh had some really sweet moments. The problem is that he's her stepbrother, which I just think is icky and unnecessary. Why? And also the age gap as well. I was like, I just can't get past those two things. I'm like, it's a little bit weird, guys. The next movie is called The Longest Ride, which is another Nicholas Sparks film. It's a Western romantic drama from 2015. It's about this girl who's a student and falls in love with this cowboy who's a bull rider, and so it brings a lot of tension in their relationship because she worries about him getting hurt and she doesn't love his job. She wishes he'd do something else. And then it alternates between that timeline and a different timeline of a couple who was struggling in their relationship due to an inability to have kids and certain issues. The problem was that I was way more invested with the modern couple, even though the other couple had a lot of trust and respect and friendship. In terms of chemistry, I just didn't feel like it was quite there so much. So even though I really liked them, I wasn't as invested. And even with their storylines themselves, I just didn't find them quite as interesting. You couldn't just focus on one couple because you know their romance isn't strong enough by itself, because both of the romances were a bit too weak, really. And I would much rather you could just pull off focusing on one couple because their romance is strong enough and good enough that you can just focus on that. So why not just focus on one couple? Why two? The next movie is the 2005 Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley. I really love this movie. I think that the two main leads have a lot of chemistry. They're enemies to lovers and they fall in love even though she has this big prejudice against him. So there's so much this movie has going for it, but the reason why I can't rank it higher is because it's not a super long movie and I think they had too much content to pile in. And as a result, the relationship felt a little bit rushed because they had too much to fit into one movie. And it would have been better, honestly, as a series because they start off not liking each other and go to loving each other. And that's a big transition to make. And I don't think they could cover all the ground they needed to. The next two movies on the list are tied because I couldn't decide between them. And they're Titanic and Atonement. They're both very similar movies, really. And they have a similar effect on you after you watch them. Titanic is for sure way more famous with Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio. It's like a classic romance movie about this rich girl who's engaged to this guy she doesn't like very much, and so she's on a boat, the Titanic, and then she meets Jack, who's this poor guy that she falls in love with, and they have a relationship for a few days until obviously the Titanic hits the iceberg, and so it all ends very tragically. But it's a great story, and they have a really lovely connection that's built on a genuine like infatuation and trust and respect. When other people were belittling her or putting her down, he actually saw something in her and thought she was really amazing, and I just thought it was so lovely. But the reason why I can't rank it at the top is because it's just so sad, and it's a shame because again it's a long movie, like 3 hours long, which gives us a lot of time to get to know the different characters and grow attached to them, which is very clever and makes me see them as more formed characters. But unfortunately I just find this one so hard to watch, so even though the storytelling's great, I wouldn't turn that on whenever and wherever because I'll be a mess by the end. I was crying for like an hour after I finished it, which isn't very fun. It's not great. I don't like making myself cry. And same with Atonement, which is a movie with Keira Knightley in it, and she's this rich girl who falls in love with this guy she's known for ages, but she'd never acted on her feelings, and they have so much chemistry and such a great connection. But the problem is that her sister, called Bryony, which is such a beautiful name, also had a really big crush on him, and so she was really resentful that he didn't like her, and so she also has a very overactive imagination and is a bit of a liar, as a lot of kids are. It's proven that kids don't think about the consequences of stuff as much as adults do. You don't have that same level of decision making until you're older. It's just the way it is. And so as a kid she's got this crush on him. I find it really painful to watch because of how tragic it is, so that's why I can't rank it higher, because I am also basing these ranks based on watchability and rewatchability, and that's why the next one, Pretty Woman, is ranked a bit higher because it has a happy ending. Pretty Woman is a 1990 American romantic comedy, which is crazy, like 1990, that sounds like so long ago. It's such an incredible movie. They just don't make movies like this anymore that are so heartfelt and cute, and I really am fond of this movie. It's starring Julia Roberts most memorably. The storyline, let me tell you, is about Edward, who's a high-powered corporate raider from New York, and the Wikipedia says, then he encounters sex worker Vivian Ward. When they talk and hang out, he realizes that he actually enjoys her company, and his previous girlfriend had criticized him for treating her like his beck and call girl. But with Vivian, even though she's feisty and opinionated and he's hiring her, he is drawn to her and actually respects her and likes to hear what she has to say and finds her boldness endearing. So he hires her to pretend to be his girlfriend for that week when he's going to events and seeing people, meeting people, and they end up actually forming a genuine bond. Now, I get why some people wouldn't like this movie because of the notable, obvious age difference between them and because of the way their relationship started. And I felt the same way. In the beginning, I was like, this is a little bit strange. But when I saw their relationship evolve and them spending time together, I actually didn't mind so much. Like, it seemed like a very genuine relationship. The reason why I can't put this any higher up is because at points Edward was just too much of a douche. When he set Vivian up this nice condo and he said he'd give her an allowance and visit her regularly, she was understandably really offended because they'd kissed and had very romantic interactions, not just sexual, and yet she's still being treated like someone he's just hiring, who he's not connected to in that way. So she's really pissed off. She's like, no, our relationship has evolved more than that. We're not at square one anymore. You should know that. And I do like that Edward rethinks a lot of his life decisions and ends up realizing, I want something more with her, especially when Vivian starts asserting boundaries with him and going, no, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to stay one more night. I'm going home. It's like he goes, wait, I could lose her for good if I'm not prioritizing her, because Vivian, despite her job and everything, it doesn't matter. She wants that fairy tale romance of feeling like the maiden rescued by the white knight, and she wants to be respected and treated like the princess she is. And so she feels like, she's not satisfied with the way their relationship is and where they're at, and Edward ends up meeting her halfway. And that's why I liked it, is because everyone makes mistakes, everyone does douchey things, but I appreciated that despite the issues, he did come back to her in the end with a big romantic gesture to show that actually he was going to meet her there and he was going to come back, because that's the most important thing. Like, if someone messes up or someone is cold or distant or mean, yes, it's bad, but it means so much if they actually come back and apologize and rethink things, because barely anyone does that these days. So it shows a genuine willingness to improve, and that's why I like this movie. And it has some really funny scenes, like when Vivian goes shopping and obviously she's dressed in quite revealing clothes that I thought looked kind of cute, but I thought they looked great. She looked hot. But anyway, the women in these fancy stores are like, ew, who is this girl off the streets? We don't want her in here, which is really mean, because they should have been polite and respectful regardless of how she was dressed or what she looked like. But Vivian totally like ruins their lives, because she goes shopping and buys all these fancy clothes and makes herself look really beautiful, and comes in like, oh, you weren't going to sell clothes to me? Well, look how gorgeous and rich I actually am. You shouldn't judge a book based off its cover, bitch. I loved her. I thought she was adorable. So the next movie, which is slightly above again, is Blue Lagoon: The Awakening. I can't believe I'm saying this, because I've seen clips of the first original Blue Lagoon movie and I don't think I would like it very much. It seems a little bit weird. But Blue Lagoon: The Awakening 2012, the modern remake, is so good. Such a fun movie. I would definitely recommend you watch it. If you haven't, I'm begging you, please watch it. It's such a good movie to watch with your friends at a sleepover or something. It just has those vibes. It's really cute. It's a bit cheesy at points, a bit cliche, but that's what we love about it. Especially if you want some tropical vibes, then definitely watch it, because it's about these two teens who get trapped on a desert island together. So the aesthetic of it is really nice. Emma's this A-star pupil who's a bit uptight and focused on work, almost to a comedic degree, whereas Dean's a bit more of not a dropout, but he's a bit lazy and not really motivated, because he doesn't have a good relationship with his dad. He doesn't have many friends. So they're not the kinds of people that you would think would go well together. And they're carried out to this island and they're trapped there for ages, and so they're forced to get to know each other and spend time together and see each other in a different light. And if it wasn't for that accident, I can guarantee they never would have had the courage to talk. But because they were put in that different context and situation, they were forced to behave differently in a way that's out of character. And I like it, because it's the two kinds of people that you would never normally see together but were forced together, and it ends up working really well, and they actually have a really respectful, sweet relationship. But it's complicated more when they're rescued, obviously, because how do you re-navigate that relationship when you're back in your normal lives after going through this really traumatic experience, going back to life as normal, you know? And I wish that the movie could have focused more and spent more screen time on them re-navigating their lives after they've been rescued. It was very skimmed over, and actually it would be a very difficult ongoing process, because they were stranded for over 100 days. So they properly got used to living this lifestyle, and Dean even thought that maybe it would stay like that forever. And because he was already a bit socially outcasted, he thought, well, this is fine, we can raise a family together and live out here in the island. And she was like, are you insane? He wasn't as happy about being rescued as she was, which sounds messed up, but it's true. Like, it's not as if he had anyone to miss. He didn't even think his dad liked him that much. Although it's a bit cheesy and everything, I love it. I think it's such a cute movie, and the two of them had a really nice connection. Here's another movie recommendation for you if you're looking for something a bit underrated that's actually excellent. Go watch My Name is Emily, which is a 2015 Irish independent drama film which stars Ivana Lynch, that's her name. Well, it's about a girl who's 16 years old called Emily, who runs away from her foster home because she tries to free her writer father from a mental institution, and she gets her classmate Arden to come with her, and they travel across Ireland together to go and get her father and set him free, and then their romance develops. And I thought that Arden, her classmate, was such a sweetheart, because he's got this endearing puppy-like awkwardness to him, as in he's really trying with her and really besotted with her, even when she's continually kind of not paying him much attention and rebuffing him. He keeps trying, which was so sweet. And I thought their romance was adorable, and he was so worried about her hurting herself or something bad happening. Their first kiss scene I thought was so cute, and I would highly recommend you go and watch this movie, because there's something very haunting about it. Like, it will stay with you days after you watched it. I still think about it randomly. Sometimes now it just pops into my head. It's one of those movies, and the aesthetic of it is really nice. It also has a positive, uplifting ending as well, which is nice. I always appreciate that. It honestly may as well be in my God tier because I really liked this movie. But now we're actually in the official God tier of my favorite romance movies. And I thought we'd start off with Dear John, which is a 2010 film, Nicholas Sparks movie, and it follows the life of a soldier played by Channing Tatum. He's got some anger issues and some trauma, and he meets this girl when he's on a 2-week break. And she's played by Amanda Seyfried, and they end up communicating even when he goes back to war and sending each other letters. The nice thing about this love story is it isn't just about the romantic love story, and as we know, romantic love stories are overused in movies anyway, but also about the paternal love between him and his father and their very complicated relationship that's worsened by the fact that neither of them are very good at expressing their emotions or their feelings, especially because they're guys, because guys already find that harder anyway. I like that the ending isn't overly happy, it's more bittersweet, but yeah, it's really good. The next one's The Lucky One, which I know a lot of people haven't seen, so seriously go watch it if you are looking for something to watch. These recommendations are truly gold. They're really good. It's an American romantic drama film, and the film stars Zac Efron, who was a soldier. He almost was blown up and died, but the thing that saved him was this photo he found of a beautiful blonde woman, and he's curious about who the woman in the photo is. They end up actually forming a romance, and it's very, very romantic. And the next one's actually Dirty Dancing. Dirty Dancing is a 1987 romantic drama dance film. I was never bored when I was watching it, and there were certain improv scenes they kept in, which was such a good decision because it made it so much more fun. One of the reasons it's ranked so high up is because I found the main lead guy just really attractive in his own way. Sometimes though, I felt like he could be a bit rough and a bit mean. Baby, the main character, hadn't done anything wrong per se, but he was just a bit sharp and short with her at points, and I was like, dude, take a chill pill. Not necessary, calm down. But aside from that, still great. The next one is Me Before You, which is a 2016 romantic drama film starring Sam Claflin and Emilia Clarke. And boy, do I love this movie. It's one of those movies that's not about a couple who ends up together. It's about a couple who aren't meant to be together and that being okay. Emilia Clarke plays Louisa, who's hired as a carer for this guy Will, who's rich and successful but is actually in a wheelchair due to an accident. And she has held herself back in her life in so many ways. Like, she's really good at fashion and has all these skills, but she's limiting herself, and she teaches him so many things about himself because he's very depressed and negative due to his accident. She makes him happy and looks after him so that if he did choose to do assisted suicide, it was the right thing to do and not because he was just feeling like life's shit and what's the point, which is kind of how he was at the beginning, and she didn't want him to be like that. They'd crossed paths for a reason, to learn and grow, but maybe it wasn't meant to be a forever thing. At least that's how I read it. We're in my top 3 now. So first we've got Notting Hill, which is a 1999 romantic comedy film starring Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts, the king and queen of romantic movies. Hugh Grant plays William, who owns a travel bookstore in Notting Hill, and he's divorced, and he meets this famous actress played by Julia Roberts called Anna, and he becomes obsessed with her. She's quite confident and ballsy, and he's a bit awkward and he can't avoid her. Her face is everywhere. And what I love about this movie is it has an incredibly heartwarming, beautiful romance, a happy ending, and it has a hilarious script, good actors, interesting set, and sad things that happen. It's just everything all in one. I've watched this movie so many times. I intend to rewatch it so many times, and it's just genuinely really romantic. The only reason it's not my number 1 is because at points I felt like Hugh Grant's character was so giving and honest and kind, and Anna definitely had more work to do than he did, in the sense that she was the one that was causing a lot of the problems in their relationship and jumping to conclusions or being unkind and dismissive, and so it was a little bit imbalanced in that aspect. He was so good to her and she wasn't always really deserving of him. And the next one is Safe Haven, another Nicholas Sparks movie, and this is like half thriller, half romance, but that's why I like it, because it has those more creepy, scary aspects to keep you interested. So it doesn't just have the romance part of it fueling it, it has other factors, and the characters have other things going on aside from the love story, which is really important to me. It also has an incredible fan fantasy aspect that's just sprinkled in, and you don't realize how relevant it is until the end, and it will blow your mind because there's this plot twist that I know a lot of people didn't like, but I thought it was so beautiful and I loved it. The film begins with this woman called Erin who's on the run from some dangerous situation, but we don't know what. We just know she may have killed someone, but then she runs to this coastal town. She finds solace in Alex, the single dad, and they start dating, and they just have such a great first kiss scene. I just thought it was so sweet. I genuinely loved it. I want to cry. Honestly, talking about these movies just makes me want to go and rewatch them all over again, and I've watched this one so many times. And the final movie, my number one, which is really hard to say, to be honest, because in a lot of ways all of these are my number one, but it's The Notebook, which is a 2004 American romantic drama film, again based on a Nicholas Sparks book, and it's starring Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams, and I just adore this movie, and I think it's wonderful despite its flaws. I think the good in this movie greatly overpowers any issues it has. It alternates between two timelines, which is an older man reading a diary to a woman in a nursing home, and then it goes back in time to a young couple falling in love. It's actually really good. With the young couple, you have Ali and Noah, and she has very controlling parents, and she more feels obligated to do certain things based on what other people want her to do, and she can be very other-centered, which causes problems in her relationship sometimes. Whereas Noah's more of a free spirit, his dad's not as controlling, and he's a bit of a free bird, and so their connection then is so much more genuine as a result, because they bring out different sides of each other that are really good, and they only met when they were teenagers, so it was like a very brief summer fling over about 2 weeks, but they fell in love hard and really fast, which also really worked because they had so much chemistry. It actually didn't feel like insta-love, it felt plausible. Despite sometimes Ali being a bit of an idiot, it just didn't really matter to me because they were just so good together. My only issue is that it does play into a few toxic romance tropes that bother me, that are outdated. I'm not going to judge it too hard because it's only a 2004 movie. There was one scene at the beginning when he was trying to convince her to go out with him, and so they were on a Ferris wheel and he was dangling off with one hand like, "I'll let go if you don't agree to go out with me," which is so wrong. It was not only a really stupid thing for him to do and douchey, but also horrible because it's really pushing consent and pressurizing her into going on a date when that's not what she wants, and then trying to twist it into something romantic when it's actually not. It's just a really weird thing to do. So I wish they would have cut that scene out. But so many other things are really amazing, like when he tries to move on and is casually dating this other girl, but he's just not feeling it and is thinking about Ali the whole time. I really love this movie, and I've just got so many good things to say about it, but all of these in the top 10 are great movies that you should definitely go and watch right now. Make sure you stay tuned because I'm going to do another video soon ranking the best and worst thriller movies. So yeah, thank you. Make sure you subscribe, and I will see you soon.